A homeless boy runs up to a millionaire woman with an urgent warning. Don't drive your car. Your husband cut the brakes. The tension rises as her world begins to unravel. What happens next is a whirlwind of shocking betrayals, unexpected alliances, and a desperate race against time. Will she uncover the truth before it's too late? Or will she fall victim to the treacherous plot? Stay tuned and let this gripping story pull you into its twists and turns. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more incredible tales that will leave you speechless. The night was quiet, except for the occasional hum of car engines and the faint rustle of leaves in the chilly breeze. A supermarket parking lot in downtown Dallas stood mostly empty, save for a few luxury vehicles gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Among the shadows, unnoticed and invisible, crouched a boy, Alex. He pulled his tattered hoodie tighter around his thin frame. The cold asphalt beneath him and the half-empty dumpster nearby were familiar companions. At 15, Alex had mastered the art of blending into the background, a skill honed from years of living on the streets. Life had been a relentless struggle since a hurricane took his parents and home 5 years ago. Dallas, with its towering skyscrapers and endless possibilities, was meant to be his salvation. Instead, it had become his battlefield. He scanned the parking lot, his sharp eyes catching every movement. It wasn't safety he sought. It was an opportunity to scavenge a meal or perhaps find something to sell for a few dollars. The supermarket had just closed, leaving the parking lot silent, a stark contrast to the bustling noise from the nearby streets. As Alex crouched lower, his eyes fixed on a black SUV parked a few spots away, 2 figures stood near the vehicle, their postures tense. Curiosity flickered within him. Conversations in empty parking lots were rarely innocent. Quietly, he shifted closer, his sneakers silent on the pavement. "I've told you before," the taller figure hissed, his voice deep and commanding. "It needs to look like an accident. No loose ends." The shorter man nodded, his face partially illuminated by the dim light above. "The brakes will fail when she's on the highway. By the time anyone finds out, it'll be too late." Alex froze. His pulse quickened as he processed the words. The pronouns were clear: she. Whoever they were talking about, she was the target of a deliberate and fatal plan. "She drives that car every morning," the taller man continued. "If you mess this up, you know what will happen." The shorter man nodded again, his silence more unsettling than any verbal response. Alex's gaze flicked to the black SUV's license plate. Committing it to memory, he edged closer, straining to catch every word. But a metallic clang broke the silence. His heart leapt. He glanced down. The lid of the dumpster had shifted under the breeze. He hadn't touched it, but the sound was enough to make the taller man snap his head in Alex's direction. "Who's there?" the man barked, his sharp tones slicing through the air. Alex held his breath, retreating deeper into the shadows of a nearby truck. He pressed his back against the cold metal, praying they wouldn't look too closely. "Probably just the wind," the other man muttered, his tone dismissive. "Check anyway," the first demanded. Alex's pulse thundered in his ears as footsteps approached. His fingers curled into fists, ready to run if necessary. The steps grew louder, closer. The truck's shadow was a thin shield, and Alex knew it wouldn't hold if the man decided to look down. But just as the footsteps reached the edge of his hiding place, the sound of a car door slamming diverted the man's attention. "Let's go," the taller man ordered. "We don't have time for this." The SUV roared to life, its powerful engine filling the lot as the 2 men climbed inside and sped off. Alex let out a shaky breath, his legs trembling as he crouched. His mind raced. They were gone, but the weight of their words lingered. Brakes. Accident. No loose ends. Slowly, Alex emerged from his hiding spot, glancing around to ensure he was alone. His eyes returned to the spot where the SUV had been parked, noting faint tire marks on the asphalt. His instincts told him this wasn't a vague threat. It was a meticulously planned scheme, and the victim had no idea her life was in danger. He tugged his hoodie tighter, the fabric brushing against his cheek as he tried to shake off the cold fear gnawing at his chest. This wasn't his problem. It wasn't his business. Yet the memory of the man's chilling tone replayed in his mind. Alex had lost his family to an accident no one could prevent. But this wasn't inevitable. It was deliberate. His feet carried him to the spot where the SUV had been parked. He glanced around, scanning for any clue that might help. A piece of paper caught his eye, fluttering near the curb. He picked it up, squinting in the dim light. It was an address scribbled hastily in pen. A decision formed in Alex's mind as he pocketed the note. He didn't know the woman, but she deserved a chance to live. His past whispered warnings of danger, of staying invisible, but his conscience spoke louder. "This isn't right," he muttered to himself. His voice was barely audible, but it felt like a declaration. He wouldn't just stand by. Alex turned his gaze to the city skyline, the lights twinkling like distant promises. He didn't know how he'd get her to listen. He didn't even know who she was yet. But the cold certainty in the men's voices had ignited something in him, a determination to act. And with that, Alex disappeared into the shadows, his heart set on finding the woman and delivering his warning before it was too late. The streets of Dallas buzzed with activity as Alex made his way through the morning crowd. The crumpled note in his pocket felt heavier with every step. He'd stayed up all night mulling over the words he'd overheard, replaying the men's sinister conversation in his mind. The address scrawled on the note was his only clue. If it led him to the woman in danger, he would have to find a way to warn her. Highland Park wasn't like the rest of the city. As Alex approached the neighborhood, the change was striking. The modest homes and bustling streets of downtown gave way to wide boulevards lined with oak trees and sprawling mansions with meticulously landscaped lawns. Luxury cars dotted the driveways, and security cameras were mounted discreetly on nearly every corner. Alex tugged his hoodie tighter, his steps slowing as he took in the opulence around him. This wasn't just a neighborhood. It was a world apart, a world he didn't belong to. Yet the urgency of his mission pushed him forward. At the tall iron gates of the Harper estate, Alex's nerves hit their peak. The sprawling Mediterranean-style mansion loomed before him, a stark contrast to his worn sneakers and patched hoodie. He slipped behind a delivery truck waiting by the service entrance, then darted through the gates as they briefly swung open. Staying low, Alex marveled at the manicured gardens and gleaming fountains. This was wealth beyond imagination. Inside the mansion, Victoria Harper, poised and elegant, was preparing for the day. As she sipped her coffee, her assistant knocked and entered with her schedule. "Mrs. Harper," the mechanic called. "Your car is ready for pickup?" Victoria nodded but remained distracted. Her husband, Daniel, had been distant lately, and the strain on their marriage weighed heavily on her. She tried brushing it off, chalking it up to stress, but deep down, doubts festered. Alex crept closer to the house, spotting Victoria on the veranda. Summoning all his courage, he stepped forward. "Ma'am, please, you're in danger." Victoria turned, startled by the boy's sudden appearance. Her initial reaction was alarm. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" "Your car," Alex stammered. "Your husband. He cut the brakes." Her suspicion turned to confusion. "What are you talking about? This is ridiculous." Alex's desperation surged. "I heard him last night in the parking lot. They're planning to make it look like an accident." Victoria stared at him, torn between disbelief and the nagging feeling that he might be telling the truth. Her doubts about Daniel resurfaced, feeding her unease. "I don't have time for this," she said sharply, turning back toward the house. But as she walked away, Alex's words echoed in her mind. Minutes later, she picked up the phone and called the mechanic. "Double-check everything," she instructed, her voice steady but her hands trembling. Alex watched her retreat, unsure if he'd done enough. But one thing was certain, he couldn't let it end here. If Victoria wouldn't act, he would find another way to protect her.